Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the penultimate episode of Class, the Metaphysical Engine, or what Quill did. Written by Patrick Ness and is directed by Wayne Yip. In the previous episode of Class, we saw a story which featured the younger cast members but didn't feature Quill that much, with the exception of the right at the beginning where she puts him in detention, and right at the very end where she seems to have gone through a transformation. This episode has gotten the timeline to the point where we see Quill's point of view from that storyline. It's set in the same at the same time as that story. Sorry if I do seem a bit rushy in today's episode. It's mainly because I don't have a lot of time. I don't have a lot of free time to record this, so I'm trying to catch in as much as I possibly can in one episode. There's probably going to be a lot of fumbling and stuttering and stuff, but I hope you can get through it together. After the incredibly praised, or at least for the Class community, episode Detained, this actually had a bit of something to live up to. And with Wayne Yip also returning to direct this episode, it felt like the story was in safe hands. The story also goes into much more metaphysical, as the title suggests, and this is such a great aspect to the fascination of this story. But what is the story? Well, essentially, throughout the series of Class, we basically learn about Miss Quill and her relationship to Prince Charlie. And essentially, she was once a freedom fighter. However, her platoon failed, and she was captured, and she was basically forced to have this creature called the Oon in her head, which basically means that she is enslaved by Charlie to do what he wants, to basically look after him, take care of him, and make sure that no harm comes to him. But she does not like this. She is, as she proclaims, war itself. And throughout the series, we see how this affects her and this troubles her. She's somebody who is used to fighting. Her species, the Quill, they are basically dedicated to the warfare, the art of warfare. We don't actually really know much about them. We don't know if they're like Sontarans, where it's just the concept of war, or whether they fight for a good cause. But they do have a fascination with war and warlike, as we learn that their basically their upbringings is that when a litter of Quill are born, they basically have to fight and kill each other so that one will survive, and then they know that one Quill can go out in the world and survive. That's kind of the mentality that we're dealing with here. However, this Quill, Miss Quill, has this Oon in her head which stops her from basically being her race, her people, and that's affected throughout the rest of the series. But this story mainly focuses on her after making a deal with Dorothea, who is working for this sinister organization, the governess, who are this secret organization that seems to know what's happening in Class. We've heard a few mentions with them. They were the one who sent that robot after Quill in the coach with the dragon tattoo, and that's just a lot of detail behind the story. And so the story kicks in with Quill meeting up with Dorothea, and they also get introduced to a new character who the governess has captured earlier on in their escapades, a character called Balon, played by, I'm going to be honest, I can't even pronounce his name, Chalky Okanoa. I do apologize, I've completely butchered that name. I know. I'm going to try and stop to pronounce his name. But Balon is actually something that connects to the rather more fascinating aspect of Doctor Who's chronology, as he is a shapeshifter who actually came to Earth as a refugee, shall we say, because he heard that the humans at this particular point in time are very protective of a particular species of shapeshifter. So he's a shapeshifter pretending to be another race of shapeshifters so he can hide out on Earth. This is actually a callback to the 12th Doctor story, the Zygon invasion and the Zygon inversion, where we essentially learn that humanity, specifically UNIT, have kept Zygons in their midst and basically looks after them as refugees. And that's a great way to tie it back into the main series proper. It's something which is a small detail, but it goes a long way into fleshing out these characters. And essentially, Dorothea, she has this technology, the metaphysical engine, and essentially it can take you to anywhere metaphysically. So what do I mean by that? Well, the first place they go, it seemed to be like a kind of Chinese garden area, and Quill is asking all of these questions, and Ballon is getting ready to get for this small little hunt, which they capture this small kitten-like creature, this rat-like creature, and it turns out to be a wild oon, the type of creature that's in Quill's head, which absolutely shocks her, absolutely devastates her. A wild oon? That's impossible. Oon are not wild creatures. They were genetically engineered. They are not wildlife creatures. But as Dorothea points out, this isn't an actual physical place in existence. They are just physically there. The Oon are a genetically altered race, but they believe that they are a natural species. And this is basically their equivalent of a heaven. And that basically what is the metaphysical engine. It takes them to basically where any strong beliefs that's been believed by a particular group of people for a particular amount of time basically becomes a form in this world. And it's such a cool idea. And it's the first opening to this is such a great one. And essentially, they're picking up these equipment, shall we say, one of them being a dead Oon, so that Ballon knows what he's essentially looking for inside Quill's head, and that this mission is so that they can help get the Oon outside of her head and so she can be free, whilst also the governess can actually learn more about her and about the rest of them, as well as something else that happens later on in the episode. The next place they go is actually to Ballon's his species, his version of hell, where we just see a bunch of statues. Could be a collection to the Weeping Angels. Might be. We'll have to. We might have seen that maybe, or possibly, but sadly, however, Class didn't get a season 2. So, yeah, and essentially he starts panicking. He starts being fearful, as basically his version of the devil seems to be hunting him out, and Quill essentially tries to get some information out of Ballon, and we essentially learn that in his species the most terrifying thing is to stay still, to become one thing forever, which for a shapeshifter, that's actually pretty a neat creative character building right there. And Quill basically confronts him and tries to antagonize him to try and get the blood of his species so that he can essentially pass down his shapeshifting abilities to Quill for a short period of time. And so they come together, they build each other's strength up, and they take on the metaphysical demon of Ballon's species, which then takes them to their third and seemingly final location, which is actually the birthplace of the goddess of the Quill. And this puts Quill in a very unique position because she doesn't actually believe any of this. She's not religious in any sense of the form. And it starts off with her just being very, very defensive about the whole concept of it. And it's, Dorothy has to keep pushing up to this idea that technically the place doesn't exist, but metaphorically it does exist. Metaphysically it does exist, and they're physically there. It makes no sense, but it's a really neat idea. And this leads into a scene where the Quill goddess has come out and Quill is just literally begging her for questions, answering why you don't even deserve our worship, because there's so many Quill that died during the war with the Shadow King, and died with the war with Charlie's species, and it wasn't there to save them. It's a goddess, but it seems to have no influence in their lives. Like, and that really hits Quill to a bitter core. Can I just say as well, Kathleen Kelly, who plays Quill, does a fantastic job here. Her acting is very straight and narrow, as she is playing an alien creature. It reminds me a little bit like, sort of like the Terminator, where it is a bit more cold and stubborn, but she is a person and she has these solid emotions in there. It's just wrapped around in these emotional blockades, and the story does a great job at showing all of this. And Balon actually chops its head off, and Quill is like, no, why did you do that? I could have been the first Quill to hear the voice of the Quill goddess. And Balon goes in and is like, no, because it's not you. You don't want to hear, like, what can it say? Oh, other than it will just completely destroy your viewpoint in life. Do you really want that? You are not religious. You hearing this would have destroyed your entire foundations of your existence. And that's actually like a really cool idea. And then they return back to Coal Hill School, as they believe, and essentially Balon does the surgery in this really gruesome scene where he basically goes into her eye using like the blood of his demon to shape his finger and put it into Quill's eye, and then he picks out the Euroon, which is fighting back, and he like splits out of her face, and you see like the rat thing coming out of her eye. It's absolutely disgusting, but it's so cool as well. And she's free. She's finally free, and I love when she comes out, just punches the living thing out of its corpse. Like, it's such a great and powerful moment that, you know, she's finally free. And the first thing she does with her freedom, is just that she makes love to Balon. But it's actually revealed that that Dorothea actually took them inside the Cabinet of Souls, a weapon that has been seen throughout the series. And essentially, there's only one way out of this existence. But one of them would have to kill the other one. To make it easier for them, Quill has her gun, and they basically have to fight for it. And to encourage Balon further to try and kill Quill, Dorothea basically reveals that his niece, I think it's his niece or his daughter, is alive out in the world. And there's such an emotional grip where they start fighting, but they don't really want to. And Balon, he gets the gun and he's like, please turn around. I don't want to look you in the eye. And she's like, no. It's like, I did love you. And she's like, I know. And he shoots, but it's been triggered to shoot the other way, and it kills Balon instead of Quill. And she's heartbroken, as the souls from the cabinet come down to witness her. She grabs one, time warps around her as her hair grows longer. I forgot to mention as well, Balon and Quill make love prior to this scene. It becomes important later on, as she basically comes out the cabinet as if she's being born, a metaphor for her rebirth, her re-coexistence into the world as a free woman, but someone who's been changed by her effects. And then we see the ending of Detained again from her point of view, where she comes in, she shoots the stone, she saves them, the characters react to her new appearance, and then all of a sudden she collapses. And Charlie holds the gun ready because, you know, she's free and she can hurt him whenever she decides. But he puts the gun down as Charlie and Mateus realize that she's fully pregnant, leaving the story on a cliffhanger leading into the finale episode. And so that is the metaphysical engine, or what Quill did. It is a surprisingly good episode. I personally prefer Detained, but I heard some people who prefer this episode over Detained and think this is the best Class episode. But the fact that Class has these two episodes in its series, it is actually a shame that it only got one series, and that it wasn't well liked when it originally came out. It is sad. It is pretty sad. Really good episode. I highly recommend it if you are interested into the Class franchise. Yeah, there's nothing much else to say, but other than it's a good episode. So join me next time when the Doctor, Bill, and Nardole go to the future, and they go to a place where one of the most basic foundations of human life have become profitable. So join me next time for Oxygen, and I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra.